الآن يمكنكم المشاركة في مبادرة الأيام الرقمية تحت شعار انطلق بقوة مع جوجل، والتي يتناول فيها خبراء جوجل عناوين جديدة أسبوعيا مثل السحابيات، مهارات من جوجل، أندرويد، فلتر، ذكاء الآلة، فايربيس، ديزاين ثينكينج، مقسمة إلى دورات وورشات عمل يومية بالإضافة إلى مسابقات أسبوعية. شاهد الأيام الرقمية مباشرة على اليوتيوب وشارك رأيك وأسئلتك مع خبراء جوجل، واحصل على شهادة حضور في كل محاضرة تشترك فيها. هذا وأكثر من الأحد إلى الخميس ابتداء من الساعة 9 بتوقيت دبي عبر الرابط المبين youtube.com/GDG-MENA.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. رمضانكم مبارك، تقبل الله منكم ومنا. وكما نقول في الجزائر صحة فطوركم إذا أتممتم الإفطار. أهلا بكم في حلقة جديدة من حلقات جي دي جي مينا، والآن يمكن أن ندعوها سهرات جي دي جي مينا، أين سنتعلم بإذن الله الكثير من الأشياء. وأتمنى أنكم قد تعلمتم الكثير من الأشياء من الحصص السابقة. اليوم بإذن الله سنتطرق إلى موضوع جوجل كلاود بلاتفورم، وبكم لأنه ستقومون بإذن الله بإنشاء مشاريع على الكلاود، وستكون بإذن الله مشاريع كبيرة وناجحة. لذلك علينا التعرف على بكم ستكون هذه المشاريع من حيث وجهة النظر الانفراستراكشر. السيشن بإذن الله ستكون بالإنجليزي، وسيكون بإذن الله هناك سيشن أخرى بالعربي وبالفرنسي وبمختلف اللغات. Hello everyone، صحة فطوركم الزلفلون. معكم عليان عبد النور، جي دي جي تيزي وزو. I will be with you بإذن الله to show you some tricks and to understand how much a project will cost you on Google Cloud Platform. So I will be with you in 1 hour. So if you have any questions, you can ask them, no problem. I hope the sound is good and we can start. So to make this session, I will use an example which is a web application, because a lot of users have already used the web app, so it will be easier to explain. I will use a lot of drawings to explain better. So if we want to host a web app, we will use an old school way. An old school way, why did I call it old school? Because this is the way we always used, and this is the way that will not change in future. This is to use our own machine. But there is a problem, because when we host our application or our solution in our machine, we need to understand that all those components, we need to handle them. What does it mean? For example, we have a motherboard. Imagine that we will have an issue with this motherboard. Are we going to stop our project? How we are going to use this transition to make it live again? Imagine that we lose a hard disk. How we are going to do to replace it? So the good thing about hosting it, this is what we call on-premise. The good thing is that we handle everything, we control everything. But the bad news is that if there is an issue, we need to handle that as fast as possible. And there is another problem. This is the hardware side. So how about the software side? In the software side, there are many people who choose to go with open source. You need to understand that open source, this is really a problem for someone who doesn't really know what he is doing, because open source, it's free. This is a good thing. It's free, it's strong, but it can be a real problem when we have an issue. That's why some people opt to go with paid solution, because with paid solutions, you have the maintenance, you have like engineers. So there is a kind of feedback. Let's say, for example, let's take Ubuntu and Red Hat. In Red Hat, both of them, they are Linux, but Red Hat, it's a paid operating system, even if it's Linux. Why? Because there are people behind it. So when you lose time, you just ask them and then they will help you as fast as possible. But in Ubuntu and other open source free solutions, you need to find the solution by yourself. So you go to open source solutions when you have the people that you trust. That's the rule. So you bring good engineers, you bring good programmers, and then you give them the open source. So you rely on them. So don't always think that this is because it's free. That means that it will be good for your solution. So maybe you will be like, okay, I will not host it in my servers. I don't have the team. I don't have the money for that. So I will just go for hosting. How hosting is working, let me give you some examples. So let me start drawing, and here we go. So let's suppose that you have a website, someone else have a website, I have a website. So we have 3 websites here, and then we have someone else, he wants to visit my website, and this one, he wants to visit your website. So what happens is that for this, we need to dedicate 3 servers. Now, the word server, it can be software as it can't be hardware. So be careful. So when we say a server, it can be the hardware as it can be a software. For example, when I say Apache server, this is the software. But when we say a Dell server or an HP server, this is the hardware. So the best solution that I can have here, imagine that there is someone who wants to host this solution for money. The best solution is to have 3 servers. And this is really bad for him because he has to invest really hard on this. So imagine that if you want to invest on those kind of solution. So what we found, we said, okay, let's make 1 server, 1 hardware server, and then make a solution, a programmatically solution to know how to split 1 server to 3 software server. The solution, for example, Apache, how he works, this is to make a folder F1, folder F2, a folder F3. So what happens is that if I go to site1.com and you go to site2.com, what happens, because the DNS is sent with the HTTP request, what happens is that I say, okay, when you got the word sit1, you bring him to the folder F3. But if you get the sit2, you bring him to F1. And this is what we call a shared hosting. The bad news about the shared hosting is that if I can hack this website, I can go here and I can go here. And that represents an issue. So the other solution, so before we go to the other solution, so in our perspective, you and me, that costs less money. And for the investor perspective, that costs less money too, because he has hosted 3 websites in 1 server. But earlier we saw that 3 servers need 3 machines. So this is good for him, but this is bad for me, because if someone hacks this, it will hack those 2. So the solution that we use now is to use 3 virtual machines. So let me delete this and remake the graph. So if I have 3 web servers, instead of having 3 web servers, I will use virtual machines. Virtual machine 1, virtual machine 2, and 3. The good thing with this solution is that they are completely isolated in a software, in a logic way, not in a hardware way, that if someone hacks here, he cannot go here because this is a new virtual machine. And the problem with this solution is that we need a lot of money because we need a strong machine. So those are the 3 ways of hosting. There is also the container solution. So let's suppose that that's a new way. Instead of using the virtual machine, we will use the container solution, and we still need stronger machine. So this is in a perspective that if you want to invest on this, so instead of buying servers, you buy one server, one strong server, and then you split it in virtual machine or in containers. So this is what the hosting consists of. So let's go back to the slides. And then we have now what we call the cloud. Now, what is the cloud? This is just another machine, but it's a strong machine, and then we consume a service. But you need to understand that the cloud, its way to calculate how much it costs, it's complicated. That's why I did this session for you to explain you how it works. Because when we were hosting in the old way, you just have to pay a fixed amount of money. You say, okay, this is $30 a year, and I don't care. But in cloud computing, you need to understand that it works in a way that you pay as you go. What does it mean is that it's good when you want to pay for like 1 day or 1 hour. You can even pay for 1 hour, but it's not good when you want to pay for a longer time and you don't know what you are doing. That's why we are going to do this session to explain how it's going. So how much it costs? It depends. And I know that every time you hear these words, it depends, you will look at me at the same way this cat is looking at this kid. And I do the same because it depends. It's a large concept. Don't worry. We have like now 45 minutes that we can still explain. Let's give the example with Google Cloud. So this is Google Cloud Platform. Google Cloud Platform is a cloud solution where it's global, which means that it's everywhere in the world. As you can see, the blue one, they are already existing, and the white one, they will be in sooner. So for example, there will be one in Doha, there will be one in Paris. So sooner there will be new regions, and those are called regions. Regions is, for example, Iowa, it's a region, and in a region, there are what we call zones. So the zone, it's like we split a region in zones. So what we hear is that Google is a multi-regional solution. Amazon, it's a zonal solution, but in Google, you can have your resource here and you can have it here. So it's in all the globe. That's what we call a regional resource. And there are not all resources are regional. There are global resources, which are image and snapshot and the network firewall and routes. There are regional resources like IP addresses and subnets. And then there are zonal resources that you can access from zone, like virtual machine and persistent disk. What does it mean is that if we say, for example, zonal resources, that if you have a virtual machine here, and then you configure it to be here, and then there is a problem in Iowa, you cannot have it, it will be off. So that's why you need to have multiple virtual machines so you can access to them all. But If we come here and say global resources, an image or a snapshot, the good story is that if you lose an Iowa and you already did a snapshot, the snapshot can be here. So your machine, even if you didn't pay for two virtual machine, your snapshot can be still accessible here. So you need to understand that difference. And we said that the GCP model works on pay as you go, but you need to understand that if you host a solution in USA and you host it in Europe, there is a slight difference in how much it will cost. In this article, they say that it will be in USA it will be cheaper, like between 7 and 19%. Why? Because in Europe they have a lot of taxes, they have a lot of laws, and it's considered, instead of looking at the country, you look at the Union, the European Union. For example, with the Brexit, when England got out from Europe, now they have different rules. But when it was with Europe, you look at Europe at like it was one country. But this is a problem because it will be much more expensive, like 19%. And then you have the free tier, so you can test by your own. Because I will go to the free tier and explain you why it exists. In the free tier, you have a lot of solutions that you can test by your own. And we said earlier the word cloud, and in the cloud, you will find infrastructure as a service, IaaS. In Google Cloud Platform, that's called Compute Engine. You have the platform as a service. This is App Engine, and you have Cloud Run. Cloud Run, this is kind of platform as a service, but it's considered serverless. I will explain that, don't worry. We have the function as a service with Cloud Functions. We have solutions that we can use AI directly from without programming. We have database as a service. We have blob storage. Blob storage, this is a way to store files without depending on an operating system, which means that you can have no limits with blob storage. We have continuous integration and delivery and deployment. And we have Stackdriver, which is now called Google Cloud Operations Suite. And then we have Cloud Shell. I explain you why we have a free Cloud Shell here. Okay, let's go back here. We have the zones. And I said, be careful about the egress traffic, because in the past, if we host a solution, we say, okay, that's $50 a year. That's fine. But now you need to understand that we don't only pay for the resources here. We also pay for the network between the machines. And what does it mean, egress? This is what we mean by egress. So let me delete this. So we have always two machines, and we have two different perspectives that we will use. So if I, let me use that. So I have this like this, and then I have this. So from this machine, if I go like that, I'm using what we call egress. From this machine, always, if I get a traffic, I call it ingress. So egress is everything that goes from this machine outside, and then ingress traffic is what comes to this machine. But from this machine, from this perspective, what is egress from here becomes ingress, and what is ingress from here becomes egress. You must understand this. Why I insist about this is that I'm here. I'm in Algeria. So let me enable this. Let me draw something. So I'm here. So if I want to go to Iowa, US Central, I want to make a request like this. And since I hosted my solution on GCP, this is considered like an ingress traffic. I don't pay for ingress, But if this server sends me something, I am in Egress. And in Egress, I have like 1 gigabyte for free. We will see that in a few minutes. But if I exceed 1 gigabyte, I will pay more. That's why you must understand some tricks. For example, you will use a CDN. For example, if you want to use Jquery or old solution, you don't need to host Jquery on your server. Bring it somewhere on some kind of some other servers where you don't need to pay for it. We will see that in details. So let's go back here. And this is what I told you. We have $300 for free for 90 days. Now, there is two things you need to understand. We have a free tier, and then we have $300 for free. Why there is this kind of philosophy? Why this is a good solution? Because let's go back to our example. And okay, our example is here. Okay, let's bring it back. So if I send 1 gigabyte from here, I receive 1 gigabyte, it's free. Now imagine that there is many requests and I need to serve everyone. I will serve, for example, 2 gigabytes. What happens is that 1 gigabyte, it will be free. And the other 1 gigabyte that stays, I will bring it from the $300 free dollars. So I have like 3 months to understand if this is like kind of, if I make a mistake, I will pay my mistake from those free 300s. That's why Google gives us 90 days. In those 90 days, you can use $300. This is like a kind of, if I make a mistake, that's fine. I will pay it. I will not pay it because Google gives us $300 for free. This is like, if I do something that I don't understand, that's fine. I don't need to pay it from my pocket. I will just bring it from those $300. So you can test and make mistakes, and that's fine. Okay, let's now continue. So in GCP, there is what we call preemptable. And then if you want to, those are just small tricks. If you want to host a machine, you just go for N1, because with N1, if you use it 24 hours, 7 days for 1 month, it will save you 30%. We will see all of that. And then we said that there is the egress traffic. Egress traffic from the same zone, that's free. But when we use internal IP, and then if we go to other Google products like YouTube or Maps or DoubleClick or Drive, we don't pay for it. So I made you this notice. Now the trade-off between region costs and egress costs. What I mean with that is, so let's bring back this and let's draw again. Sorry. Okay. Okay. So I told you that in Europe it's expensive, right? So maybe I will say, okay, then I will just host my solution on USA. But you need to understand that Europe is not far. It's just here. For example, if I host my solution in Madrid, in Spain, I will not pay so much latency. So you need to make the trade-off between latency and how much you are going to pay. Because in USA, that's not expensive, but it's far to go here. So that's why if you choose to go to Madrid, then know what you are doing. And that's why Google gives us a wonderful solution, which is a calculator. With this calculator, we are going to simulate approximately how much my project will cost. So Those are just small slides. Now let's go to the action. Okay. Here is the first link. The first link is about what Google offers as a free tier. A free tier, this is what we don't pay every month. So every starting month, it gets a reset. So if we use, for example, 28 hours per day for the App Engine, and then the next month, the first, for example, in May, it will get reset. So we don't have to worry. So let's explain those solutions. Now, let's begin with App Engine. In App Engine, this is the platform as a service. What I do, I go to App Engine, I upload my code, for example, Python, Java, or Node.js, and then I don't worry about the infrastructure. I don't care if it's Ubuntu, I don't care if it's in Red Hat, I just care about my application. This is what we call in the past a VPS. So for people who already use the VPS, this is the VPS solution. So the PaaS, platform as a service, this is a kind of virtual private server. In virtual private server, we just pay for what we use, and we don't pay for the egress traffic. We don't pay for the bandwidth, because if we go here, as you can see, everything is included. So the outgoing traffic, it's included. So as I told you, the incoming, this is the ingress. The outgoing, this is the egress. Egress is everything that goes from our server outside, and incoming, this is the ingress. So we don't pay 28 hours per day using the F1 instance. So what is the difference between F1 and B1? F1, this is front end, B1, this is back end, and this is like the F1, you have the auto scaling, and the B1, you have the manual scaling. So if I come here and I come to, let's go to App Engine, and I choose F1, and it asks me how many instances by hour are you going to use? Let's say I will just use one instance. So if I do add to estimate, it will cost me $0, and I will use 730 hours per month. So now let me zoom like this to have much more space. So let me use 2 instances now and do add to estimate. As you can see, it's $30. Why I pay $30? Because I exceeded the amount of hours per month. This is 1,400. And to have it free, this is 28 hours. So if I do 28 hours by day multiplied by 30, I will only have 840 hours by month. Those 840 hours by month, I don't pay for them. And that's the good news. So you can use up to 840 hours by month if you use F1 instance. So if you see now, remember this number, $30. So what I do, I come here, and instead of using 2 instances, I use 1 instance, and then I use F2. I was using F1, and then I use F2 with only 1 instance. So if I do this, that's the same price. So I explain you what's going on here. So let me delete. We said that we in the cloud platform, we pay as we go. That's the rule. So let me bring the chalk back. So if I have one, the red, it's red. Let me use, okay. So if I have one server, and this server, I will call it now vCPU. vCPU to say virtual CPU. And then I have requests and response. So I have one vCPU and then 1 gigabyte of RAM. So the difference is that if I want now two vCPUs in cloud, this is equivalent. So if I, for example, have one vCPU which has 1 gigahertz. So if I wanted two vCPUs, of course I will have 2 gigahertz. That's obvious. So I can choose another solution that has already a machine that has already a 2 gigahertz. So if I buy this machine, this is like I borrowed two 1 gigahertz machines. So that's called gigahertz hour. So, gigahertz seconds. Gigahertz seconds, that means every 1 second, how much gigahertz I am consuming. So in the cloud, we don't count the number of machines we are using. We count how many gigahertz we are consuming within 1 second. We'll see that in few seconds. So what I did now to explain you better is that I choose F1. So if I come here, if I come to the different categories of, we have the F1, it has 256 megabyte of memory. The F2, it has the double. This is like I got two machines F1. So instead of having two machines F1, I just go with one machine F2 because I am just borrowing resources. I'm not borrowing machines, I'm borrowing resources. That's what we call pay as you go. So if you want 10 machines, for example, if I wanted, this is 1000 F4, this is 8 times these machines, 4 times this machine. So instead of having 4 machines, I just go with this. So paying 4 machines on this is equivalent to paying 1 machine in F4. Now, we have 1 gigabyte of egress per day. So if we have a lot of traffics that comes from our machine to people, if we are serving pictures and so on, 1 gigabyte, it will be free. But if I exceed 1 gigabyte, I will pay. Artifact registry, by the way, sorry, I forgot. This offer goes only for standard environment. Google App Engine, there is the standard environment and then there is the flexible environment. The flexible environment, this is where you will use Docker. And standard environment, this is where you are going to use Python 3 and so on. So it's predefined environment in standard environment. But it's good because it's faster. So I give you the explanation. So Google App Engine is good when you want microservices. Microservices, this is it. You have a lot of resources, and every resources you have service 1, service 2, service 3, and so on. So you they talk to each other. So when you want to scale, for example, you have many people who are asking for your resources, you just add another resources. In Google App Engine, that's what we call pay as you go. So if you want auto scaling, what happens is that with a standard a Google App Engine standard solution, it will be fast, but with flexible, it will be fast, but not as fast as standard. So if your application doesn't do this, for example, you have like this, and then you have a lot of people who are asking for your resources, and then it goes down. If you have those kind of solution, go with standard. And this is what we call spikes. Spikes goes a lot of people just like that. If you don't have those kind of, if you only have like fixed visitors, then you go with flexible. And then if you want the new way, you go with Cloud Run, that we will see in few minutes. Okay, let's delete this. Let's go back here. So artifact registry, this is where you will store your containers. This is the upgrade solution of container registry. Those are solution for machine learning. You need to understand that, as you can see, it's called units. Why units? Because, for example, I want to upload an image, and if I call it 5,000 image, I'm limiting my solution because I can upload, for example, a PDF. A PDF, it has, for example, 10 pages of image. So if I see it like units, then I just upload the 10 units. So 10 units are 10 image because I uploaded one PDF that contains 10 image. Bigquery, this is a solution for data warehouse. So data warehouse, this is where you have something like this. You have data lakes, what we call data lakes. You have a lot of files, lot of disk, and so on. And then you want to make them structured. You want to make what we call insights. And that's what we use in business intelligence. So business intelligence, to make you take decision based on your data. And Bigquery is perfect for those kind of solution. So if I go here, so for Bigquery, you have every month, you have 1 terabyte of query every month. So what does it mean is that if you have big data that has, for example, 500 gigabytes, you query it twice for free. And then you can store your result up to 10 gigabytes. Cloud build is when you want to generate the container, so you need to build it. Cloud function now, this is the new trend, what we call serverless. So what is cloud function? Cloud function, to explain what is cloud function, I will explain it in few minutes with a perfect example. Cloud Run, we said cloud function, we said Google App Engine. So in Google App Engine, what happens is that if I have my machine, this is what we call the CPU clock. So the App Engine, I'm paying for the whole process. But with the Cloud Run, I'm only paying for what people are interacting. So this is an idle state. This is an idle state, and this is an active state. So I only pay for the active state. I don't pay for the idle. And by the way, for scalability, if I want to scale in Google App Engine flexible, the minimum that I can scale down is 1. There is always 1 instance that is running. But in Google App Engine standard environment, I can scale to 0. So this is less expensive than flexible Google App Engine Flex. And the most cheaper one is Cloud Run. So Cloud Run is really cheap. So if you want to host your application, go for Cloud Run. It's really cheap. Okay, so let's go back to the other solution. Cloud Shell, it's free. Why it's free? Because this computer engine. You need to understand that we can have a machine that runs and that will have 30 gigabytes of HDD, not SSD. But as you can see, there is no IP address because you will pay for the IP address, because IP address, as you know, when you reserve it, you need to pay for it. So to interact with it, it will have a private IP, and this private IP, you will interact with it using the Cloud Shell. That's why it's free. So with the Cloud Shell, you can interact all the Google products for free. And this is on Debian. So you need to understand the kind of Debian or Ubuntu, whatever. Cloud source repositories, this is the equivalent of Git. Cloud storage, this is where we store the image and so on. This is for blob storage, as we said. The difference between blob storage and NTFS and FAT32 and so on. In blob storage, there is no limit of the size of a file. So we bring them first. So here is what we do in Google Cloud. So we have here the GCS, Google Cloud Storage, and then we have all other solutions. So we bring them first here, and then we use our treatment here, our operations. So better to start them first in Google Cloud Storage and use our operation. So in Google Cloud Storage, there are two types of operation. There are class A and class B. In class A, we create or modify, and class B, for example, we list. So the class B, they don't consume so much resources. That's what we call why we call them class B. And the compute engine, this is the IaaS. This is the infrastructure as a service. So let me create a new machine here so you can understand. But before you create a machine, I told you earlier about the function as a service, Google Functions. So we come to billing. By the way, you just enter the credit card, and the credit card, this is not to take money from you. This is just to prove that you are a real person. And then once you get a credit card, as you can see, I have the $300. That's still, I didn't use so much resources with this project. So you come to budget and alerts here. In budget and alerts, I'm going to create a limit of my budget because I need to control how much I'm going to spend. We just do create budget. Let me zoom. Let's call it, for example, avoid kind of weird name in Algerian. And then we leave it like this. We select the project. Since I only have one project with this account, it's auto-selected. And then we select the resources. I want to select all the resources. I want the project, the budget to apply on the whole project. We do next, and then we specify the amount. So for example, I go to $500. I only have $500. And then I do next. And then it tells me when I can do like a threshold. What does it mean is that, for example, I choose that if I get 50% of my budget, send me an email. So by default, there is 15, 19, and 100. You can choose, for example, 20%. That's fine. And then you check this. Connect pops up. And let me explain what does it mean. So in the slides, I gave you this link. This link, it's on the docs, where you can find a code on Python or on Node.js that will stop your billing account once you get $500 that I just chose here. So if you have, for example, $300, that's fine. Now I explain you what does it mean a function as a service, or what we call serverless. Okay, I have my budget. So I put $500. $500, and I don't want to exceed more than $500 because it can exceed. I must control this. What I do a cloud pops up. Pops up is publisher subscriber. So for example, when you get a notification on Facebook, So you are subscribed on a comment on a thread, and then every time when someone comments you, you get a notification. This is a publisher subscriber. And then I program a function. That function will not work until there is a trigger. So this trigger, it will make it work. So in Google Functions, I don't pay for the resource. This is my CPU. And this function used only, for example, 2 seconds of CPUs. I only pay for those 2 seconds. I don't pay for the whole machine. And this is the concept of serverless. In serverless, we don't pay for the machine. We only pay for what we use for real. This is like, it's been, for example, 45 minutes I was talking, and then, for example, you just pay for this 1 minute. You don't pay for the whole session. So what happens now? I program a function, I write it here, it stays idle, and then once I get $500, which is 100%, the publisher, he knows what's going on, and there is a subscriber here. So I send a signal to an API, which is the cloud bill, and then I tell him, okay, now stop my credit card, stop taking money from my credit card. So you can have this example, it's in the docs. We will do a whole session about this. So this is how we stop paying money using the budget and alert, using PubSub and using Google Functions. Okay, so let me go back on Compute Engine and I show you something. On Compute Engine, there is something that is called Preemptable. What does it mean, Preemptable? Is that if I create a new instance, I'm just creating a new machine, and then I come here. So what we do every time we create resources, always use it with this. So let's bring it near. So I don't need this. I come to Compute Engine. I open Compute Engine, and then I simulate. I don't need this one. So I need one instance on Debian because I don't pay for Windows. So I just use an open source solution. I need N1 machine. And in N1, you need to understand this machine, this zoom here, this machine with 500 megabytes of RAM, that's free. That's totally free. You can test on it. You can install whatever you want. So let me choose another machine, for example, 360 gigabyte with 96 vCPU. And let me see how much it will cost me. So it will ask me here, how much time are you going to use it? I will say I will use it the whole month. So I will do add to estimate. It will cost me $2,000. Remember, $2,300. And then imagine that I don't need that much of resources for the whole month. I just need to use it for 1 day. For example, I have a job and then I need a lot of calculation. What I do, here is a small trick. Zoom here. Let me just come to machine class and choose preemptable. I just left everything else like it is. And then I tell him, okay, I need per month, I need 24 hours per month. And I do estimate, just look, for 1 day, I only pay for $23 for this machine. So if I run it for 24 hours, if I run a machine on 24 hours, this machine has 96 vCPU and 360 gigabyte. This is amazing. I only pay for $23, and this is nothing. What is $23 compared to this machine? This is the magic of the cloud. So you pay only for what you use. So if you have a big project and you know that those calculations they don't go beyond one day, you just go with preemptable machine. Don't go with normal machine. So preemptable machine, this is a machine that can last at max 24 hours. After 24 hours, it shut down. So if you need a work that takes like 12 hours or less than 24 hours, you go with preemptable. And as you can see, if I go back to regular and then do estimate, this is $100. So imagine the difference between $100 to $23. You win a lot. And then you need to understand that there is also the concept of egress traffic. So if I come here, there is, sorry, so where is it? Okay, where is it? Okay, we have 1 gigabyte network egress from North America. So you need to have this free offer. You need to host your machine in USA. And about the IP address, you need to understand one thing. Here is something that I want you to understand. If you reserve an IP address and then you don't use it, you need to understand that every 1 hour you will pay this. This is expensive if you don't use it. Don't think that, okay, I will reserve an IP address and then I will not use it. No, use it. If you reserve an IP address, just use it. So if you reserve an IP address, you will pay 0. So if I take this and paste it here, so 0.004 multiplied, this is by hours. So if I multiply it by 24, and everything I multiplied by 30, I will only pay for like $3 for an IP address. So it's cheap. So you just use it. You don't reserve an IP address and then delete the resource. So if you delete your machine, don't forget to delete the IP address too. And that's why I told you here. So every time you do something, please stop your resource. If you don't use it, just delete the resource. Don't let it pending, because if you let it pending, you are going to pay for it. So this is the model about how the cloud is working. You pay for what you do. So if you pay for 1 month, you just go for a normal machine. If you go for 1 hour, you just go for preemptable machine, and that's it. I hope you understood something about. Don't forget to use this calculation so you can estimate how much it costs, and you can even email it. And let me check if there are some questions. What's the difference between shared hosting and dedicated hosting? In dedicated hosting, as I told you, this is like I give you one server for you. But in shared hosting, this is like if we host, me and you, a website, we are hosting the same server. So if you make mistakes in the security, I can pay for it at your place. That's the problem about shared hosting, and the resources are shared. So even there is the concept of quota, but just avoid the shared hosting. Go for the cloud, that's the best. Go, for example, for Cloud Run, or for example, App Engine standard environment. That's the best solution. So Any question, please? We have still 5 minutes. If you have question, just ask for them. So I repeat, when you use your credit card, Google don't touch it. This is just to prove that you are a real person. Because if imagine that you were hosting a solution and then you ask people to prove their existence only using their email address. Someone can create 1,000 email address in 1 minute with just a script. So you can imagine you will just lose all your resources. So what is the best solution is to prove your existence using your credit card. That means that you are a human, not a bot. Thank you. And you have 3 months. So in 3 months, and by the way, if you don't want to use those 3 months, there is still the free month on Quick Labs. So can you please share the Quick Lab link? In Quick Lab, you can practice for free, but there is a condition. Don't try to use another machine than the one they ask you to use. For example, let me give you an example. So for example, in the course, they tell you, hey, use an N1 and N2 a normal machine. So what you do, you say, okay, that's free. So let me try this kind of machine. They will just block you because it's like an attempt to break the system. So just use the machine they ask you to use, or they will block your account. Or you just use the $300, you are free. It's your money. Any questions? We still have 3 minutes. Yeah, sorry, I forgot about the AI. So this is an important thing. I talked earlier about the API, but I didn't go deeper. So if I do, for example, AI Vision Google test, you will see that I can try it for free, but I try it as human, which means that I click, I choose a picture, and I try it. But when you host a solution, you don't ask people to go to this link and then upload the picture and give me the result. What we do, we program this. So let me bring you a schema about this solution. Oops, what I just did. Okay, so let's suppose that you want to create some kind of Facebook-like, where people, when they upload their picture, for example, I upload the flower, and this flower, yeah, please, we can add 10 minutes, thank you. So when people upload a picture of a flower, you tell them this is a flower. So imagine that you don't want to program this, and the problem, the worst problem, the problem is that you need a strong machine, but you don't have a strong machine. So what you do, you program your solution, for example, using PHP or Python or Node.js, and then what you do, you go to Google and you tell them, okay, borrow me your service. So when you borrow the service, this is what we call an API, Application Programming Interface. So Google will give you the API. So what happens? You upload the picture, someone uploads the picture on your application, but behind the scene, what happens? This picture goes to Google. It tells him, hey, this is a flower. And then you get the JSON file. This is just a text file where it contains the word flower plus other information. And then the user will see this is a flower. So he will think that it was you who programmed this, but you didn't program this. You just go to Google and you borrowed this solution. And in the free tier, you have limitation. You can't use that forever, of course, because you don't pay for it. So this is exactly the same thing as Google Maps. So when I use, for example, an Uber-like application, the maps, this is not the Uber-like application that gives me the map. It goes to Google and it asks him, hey, give me the maps. And then Google tells him, okay, how much requests did you do today? Did you exceed more than the request? If you exceed the request, then you have to pay for it because he gains money. So of course he must give some money for Google. Nothing is free. Okay, are there any questions? So when you create a machine, I will do that in few minutes. So when I create a free machine, let me show you the machine that is free. So I go to N1 and then I go to F1 micro, and then here, instead of having an IP address, you come to management security disk, networking, and in networking, as you can see, primary IP address, this is internal IP address. I don't need external IP address, none. And this is how you can have a free machine forever, not forever, maybe in 1 year or 2 years. This, you don't pay any centime for it. So you just create and you have your machine. This machine, as you can see, there is no external IP address, so I don't have to pay anything. So how am I going to interact with it? Using the Cloud Shell. You understand now why Cloud Shell is free? So I can interact with other services, because this is something like, in our perspective, this is a machine, but in Google's perspective, this is nothing, because it's like 500 megabytes of RAM, which is nothing on the huge Google Cloud platform. So as you can see here, so I can have normal machines. So if I do ls, if I do, for example, lsb release to get information, as you can see, it's a Debian machine. So if I do free human, as you can see, I'm using, where is the RAM? Yeah. Oops. Why it gives me 50 gigabytes. Anyway, now you saw how Google Cloud Platform, it's really amazing. I love the way that they give you 300 and then $300, and then there is the free tier, so you can train on the free tier, and if you make a mistake, you still have the 300s like to cover you in 3 months. I think that you can learn a lot in GCP. And if you want, like, you need to understand that there are some activities that needs bigger machines. And those activities, they need like 2 hours of calculation or 3 hours. So if you want to invest on these kind of activities, you just borrow a machine on Google Cloud and then make it preemptable. That means that you just only need 3 hours, not 24 hours. And then you will pay like $20 or $30, and you will have a stronger machine. And then you can calculate how much money you can win. So those kind of investment of the future. Any other questions? Well, since there is no questions, so you can check the slides. There are other sessions we did in the past. There will be other sessions that we will do in future, Bismillah. So I guess everyone will know what's going on. I just forgot. Last thing, you need to understand, because everything works in the cloud, you can interact with your resources directly using your phone. So can you imagine, instead of buying a machine like $2,000, you have your phone, you just install Google Cloud Console on your phone, and then you do everything on your phone. That's the magic of the cloud, because everything works in the cloud. But you just give orders using your phone. Okay, I hope you understood how things works, how the money side of GCP works. If you have any questions, please ask them. If you don't have them, so as we say in Algeria, صحة سحوركم وصحة فطوركم لغد إن شاء الله. شكرا جزيلا وإلى الملتقى.